Throughout the course of this little show, I've come across some popular anime, both good and bad. But for today, I decided to go for something more obscure. And what's more obscure than an anime from the 2000s that I haven't seen that many reviewers talk about on here? So today we'll be looking at Strange Dawn, a 13-episode anime created by Hello Filmmaker for a company named Pioneer, now known as Geneon, back in 2000. But unlike some of the other anime I've reviewed recently, this is not an anime adaptation of a previous work. This is an original work. So what do I think of it? Well, let's find out. So right off the bat, we see our two main leads, named Yuki and Eri, venturing through the desert of this new world. Yes, you heard that right. New world. See, prior to this anime, the two of them were sent to this world of little people by Princess Alia to end a terrible war that has been going on for years. Said princess also gets captured, and it's up to our two main leads to not only end the war, but also rescue the princess, only to find out later that the princess died during an escape attempt. As for the war itself, well, the side we were following basically gives up, and that's really it. Oh, and the two girls go home. Whoopee. So, yeah, there's not really much of a resolution here. Outside of that, the rest of the plot is Yuki and Eri trying to understand this world as well as their role to try and end the war, which they suck at. Yeah, I get that they don't have any magical powers, but despite being taller than everyone on this planet and having more strength, they don't really use these advantages outside of a couple instances where they scare the enemies away, and that's about it. Hell, they didn't even really end the war. Shao, one of the people on the planet, gives up, hoping it'll end the conflict, and I guess it does, because after they cut to the epilogue, we see the village Eri and Yuki originally showed up in perfectly fine, so maybe Shao's sacrifice did it? It's hard to say. So, yeah, they had one job, and they couldn't even do it right. Joyous. But outside of that, the story is fine. I like the world building, the writing, and the chemistry between Yuki and Eri is passable, and I like that the show is willing to go places. Despite the cute setting, the world of Strange Dawn is anything but. As mentioned prior, the areas we go to in this show are engaged in war. There's death, destruction, betrayal, and it's all on screen. Even the aftermath of a hanging is shown on screen. Yes, this happened. However, despite my praises towards the story, I am not a fan of the pacing at points, the resolution is god-awful, and the way certain characters are written are handled poorly. Speaking of which, let's talk about the characters. Yuki and Eri, despite their poorly written roles as guardians, are meh. There's not really a whole lot for me to hate about them, and their clashing personalities of loud and rude for Yuko and soft and sympathetic for Eri make for some interesting chemistry, but there's not much else to them outside of that, and as I went over in the story segment, they don't really contribute much to the overall story. On top of that, there's not really much else for them to do as characters outside of what I previously mentioned. So, it's in the middle for me. Then we have the other characters, and oh boy, I did not care for most of them at all. They certainly have personality to them, and a couple of their character arcs were fine, but as I was going through all 13 episodes, a lot of them didn't really leave much of an impact on me, to the point where I had to use wikis to remember most of their names. The only characters I can vaguely remember are Shao, Rekka, and that's only because of her relationship with Shao, and that's it. I didn't care about any of the other characters in this series, and that definitely applies to the other villains. None of them stood out to me, and none of them were even all that great. They were just things that stood in the way of our heroes, and even calling them things is too much praise in my book. When I can barely feel empathy or even remember most of the characters, that is not a good sign, and it's a shame because I can tell they at least tried with these characters, especially since they get more screen time than Yuki and Eri. But yet, I still couldn't care about most of them. Speaking of letdowns, let's talk animation. I'm not going to judge the animation of this as something of today, but holy hell did the animation bug me at points. Oh sure, the backgrounds and the way the shots are framed are fine, but the coloring for the character models look really flat in comparison, and sometimes the animation can look a little choppy or disgusting. Seriously, what the hell is this? So yeah, it's not awful, but it's not great either. Finally, we have music, and it's actually pretty good. I love the opening and ending tracks of this series, and the background music is also composed really well. Though one pet peeve of mine is the constant reuse of the opening theme's instrumental. Seriously, they use it in almost every episode, and it gets kind of repetitive after a while. Gee, it kind of reminds me of a certain movie series. I wonder what that could be. But yeah, it's like listening to a great song on repeat/loop for over several hours. Eventually you're gonna get sick of it, and it's no different here. So yeah, the music is pretty good. But now's the time to wrap this up. Overall, Strange Dawn is a mediocre series. While it has good music and decent storytelling, it suffers from mediocre characters, poor pacing, and mediocre animation. You're really not missing out on anything if you decide to skip on this one, and honestly, there are far better animes made by Hello Filmmaker you could be watching instead of this. Princess Tutu, Pre-Tier, Skip Beat, hell, in terms of this humans in another world kind of anime, No Game No Life, Yujo Senki, and ReZero are better than this anime. So that concludes this review. I'm the Mounty, and next time we meet, we'll encounter the Pillarmen in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2, Battle Tendency. See you then!
The blackest night falls from the skies, the darkness grows as all life dies. I crave your heart in your demise. By my black hand, you too shall rise.